RS2477. Probably doesn't mean much to you, does it? Well, if you've ever driven a dirt road, you're more familiar with RS2477 than you probably realize. The RS actually stands for Revised Statute, and it was enacted by the United States Congress back in 1866. It was to encourage settlers to move west by making access easier through the creation of roads. Its entire text is one sentence. The right-of-way for the construction of highways across public lands not otherwise reserved for public purposes is hereby granted. That simple phrase has led to plenty of controversy here in Utah between county governments and federal agencies as to who has jurisdiction over certain roads that cross federal lands and who has the right to close those roads. Lawsuits have been filed in many cases and gone through decisions and appeals in district court. One Utah county, though, has decided to take a different approach to the issue. And while it may not work for all counties, it potentially could change the RS2477 issue across the board.
A huge majority of these roads, probably close to 90%, are also mapped on vintage USGS maps that were done prior to 1976. All the makings are there for the parties, by that I mean BLM, the county, the state, various stakeholders to come together and say, why do we need to sue over these? They're open, they're obvious. Can't we find a way to negotiate a resolution as opposed to an expensive mile-by-mile lawsuit? That's basically the premise behind what we call the Iron County pilot process. It's a threat to some because for so many years now, and maybe decades, we've been in an adversarial mode with the BLM and with some of the groups who oppose us. We're having to get used to the idea of talking to them.
The Iron County pilot process is a plan to get all interested parties together in a project that is open and transparent, addresses all interests, and is grounded in reasonable consensus on all the issues. Part of the plan is to prove that agreement is in fact possible in many of the RS2477 cases, and that such agreement is beneficial to everyone involved. The pilot program will first focus on non-controversial roads and move up from there, only bringing the court system into the equation after consensus has been reached.
Everything's just agreed on, down to which road will be identified, the length, the width, everything.
While the Iron County process likely would be far more difficult in counties where many of the roads are highly contentious, in other places this approach could put an end to the courtroom battles and close the book on at least some of the RS2477 issues now facing Utah. While the Bureau of Land Management has already responded favorably to the idea and are all ready to move forward, they are not the only stakeholder involved.
There are a lot of people on both sides of the issue. Frankly, they're invested in keeping it as an ongoing controversy. Thawing out those old positions is difficult, and it may not be successful. Our attitude is we're going to keep taking one step at a time on this until we either reach the courthouse steps or we step on a landmine and the whole thing blows up. And I may be coming back in 6 months saying, yeah, we did it, or saying, boy, that sure did not work. So stay tuned.
Only time will tell which scenario is more likely. For At Your Leisure, I'm Terry Wood.